be the process of doing a transaction?
I think so for the most part of what I know, it makes sense. I haven't really. I've looked through the first case study. I just haven't filled it out yet. But I mean, it makes sense for the most part. But we'll see once I finish it up and send it to you if it really does make sense to me or not.
That's the true test, right? The true test. Yeah, exactly. So we have those videos on ProU, and let me just share my screen really quick. On the Pro Team website, when you come on here, oh, look at you, Ritz. We've got classes here. This is awesome. I'm like, oh, I should have look at this class. Ritz, it doesn't even, oh, you have to register for that one. That's why. Career Visioning with Johnny has to be registered for. Here's our team meetings. Transaction Tuesday and Thursday. This week, Ritz, we're only doing Tuesday. I think for the summer, Ritz, we're only going to do Tuesday transaction classes just because so many people have been on vacation. So we're just going to cut back a little. Just so you know, for the calendar, Ritz. Plus, this is going to be on Thursdays, the shift tactics, and we would rather push everybody to that. If they're going to go to one class, we want them to go to that. Okay, so if you come on here, Kason, right here it says Transaction Thursday playlist. It's really both Tuesday and Thursday classes. It's just transaction classes. If you come on here, you will see all the case studies. This one goes over case study number 4. This one we went over case study number 5. Let me scroll down here. I know there's more. This is going over a case study. Ritz, could you label which case study this video is, this video, and this video? I think they're like 1, 2, and 3, but I could be wrong that they're not in order. Yeah. So you can come in here, Kason, and you can look at these where we went over them in the past. This goes over what the agent's responsible for and what my team does for you and all of that. But I think you were on last week, right? When I showed everybody the stuff on the MLS and how to make a packet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you just log into your MLS account with your login credentials, and you'll log in here and go to the forms and go to the forms library. And then if you have the case study pulled up at the same time, since that first one you're going to hand fill out, you're going to need a buyer broker. So if I just type buyer in and I hit this plus sign next to the exclusive buyer broker agreement, that's going to add it to your packet. And then if I type in wire fraud, you're going to need that. You're going to need buyer due diligence checklist. So I'd add that. And then the first deal is really, really simple and you don't have any addenda. So if you type in RepC, then that's on here. And then you just say create packet, and then you can download it from here so that you can fill it out by hand. Now you get a certain amount of free copies every month at the office. So you can always go there if you don't want to print all these pages out at home, and it will auto populate your name. So you'll come in here and let's just quickly, because I haven't done it in a while, let's go over this buyer broker agreement. And this is going to help you to understand it a little bit better, because a lot of people get confused when filling this top part out. Now, when you're doing your case studies, I always just do like Jane Doe, John Doe. People do like comic superhero names, whatever, Hulk Hogan, whatever, just a fake name. And then you'll have your name as the agent right here, because you are going to be the buyer's agent. And you are the authorized agent, it says, for the company. That's why Keller Williams is up here, because actually this agreement is between the company and the buyer. And then the company is just authorizing you to work on the agent's behalf, because technically speaking, when you make a commission, it is actually the brokerage's money, and they pay you. So that's why the agreement is between the brokerage and the client. So you are the agent. So you put your name here in section 1. Now, then it goes on to say, you're the authorized agent for the company starting on the effective date as defined in section 15. Well, what section 15 says is when this agreement is signed, it's effective. And then it says, and ending at 5 p.m. on, so this date is not the date that it starts, this is the date that it ends. And I prefer to do the last date of the year unless they're signing it in December. So if they sign it in December, do the next year. But that way you always know all of your agreements expire in December. Now that's unless you have a client that's like, absolutely not, I only want this agreement for 3 months or something like that. So there's those random situations where you might do the deadline differently. But I always do it for December. Most people are fine with that. Then this goes on to say that it covers you for the acquisition or closing of a property, whichever occurs first, and to act as their agent in negotiating. And we say in any county or on any property, not to be determined, because that would essentially imply that in an addendum to this agreement, you're going to define that property, which we're not going to do that. So it's just on any property at any address in any county. If it's an investor, sometimes they will require or request that you specifically spell out the address because they have decided on the property and they only want you to represent them if they end up getting that property. So know that that's completely normal for investors, generally speaking. So don't stress about that and think that they're like trying to yank your chain or something like that. Okay. Then this just goes on to say that you can extend this if you want, and that there's addendums that you can do that in. Then this is going to outline your brokerage fee. What goes to the brokerage? Now, we don't charge a transaction fee on the team, but then we do say that the commission is up to 3%. And we explain to the client that in here, that it says that they're going to pay the difference. We would never charge them that we go by this clause in here. Let me see. That it is based on whatever is on right here. The BAC is whatever is offered on the MLS system. We just put 3% here because if a brokerage or a builder were ever to say, well, I want to see your buyer broker agreement, because if your client agreed to pay you less, then we're not going to pay you that much. So we just do 3%. So that if that was what was offered, you would be compensated up to that 3%. Okay. But we never make the client pay. If they wanted in writing that you're not going to charge them that difference, then we can write an addendum and say, whatever's offered on the MLS is what they're going to be paid. Okay. Then this protection period, what that means, and generally speaking, most people do 3 months. What that means is if you guys were to terminate this agreement or it were to expire and the client hadn't gotten under contract, but then they went back to a house that you had showed them for the next 3 months, you would still be their agent if they go under contract on that house. Okay. So if you show them a house and they end up going under contract after your agreement has expired, but within this protection period, you are still this agent and entitled to this brokerage fee.
Usually Section just do 3 months, or do you just?
Yeah, you just do 3 months. That's, okay. I mean, a quarter of a year is a good amount of time, you know? Yeah. So we just go with 3 months. It's reasonable. If it's somebody maybe that you know is going to be kind of a headache, you might up that. But 3 months is, I mean, to be honest with you, if somebody's not happy working with you and you're not happy with them, just let the agreement go. Let them out of it. You know, we're not in the business of making people pay us. Like that's not how we want to be. Buyer representations and disclosures. The buyer warrants that the buyer is not entered into any other agreement. So this is saying that they have not signed a buyer broker with anybody else. The buyer will, in all communications with other real estate agents, notify them in advance that they are in this agreement with you. So this is essentially saying we're not in agreement with anybody else. And if we talk to another agent, the first thing we're going to tell them is we have an agent. We have signed a buyer broker agreement with another agent. Maybe you're out of town and they stop in an open house. Maybe they stop in at a builder's office and don't tell you. You're going to explain to them, you have legally signed that you are going to tell everybody that I'm your agent. And that's the first thing you're going to tell them before you talk to another agent. That they are going to furnish you with all personal and financial information to facilitate their buying of the property. They're going to exercise care and due diligence under their legal obligations of the contract. They're going to hold you harmless because when they're inspecting the property, because you're not an inspector and things like that. And upon signing this exclusive buyer broker, they're going to personally review and sign, which we will send it to them after they've signed this, the buyer due diligence checklist and wire fraud. So that warns them even more of their rights and their responsibilities. And they're going to disclose to you all properties in which the buyer, as of the date of this agreement, is either negotiating to acquire or has a present interest in acquiring. So they're going to tell you if they've made offers on any other houses. So that's their responsibility as the buyer. This next part is the agency relationship. It goes through the duties of a buying agent, so your duties, and then the duties of a limited agent. Now, we don't do limited agency in our office in the sense that you would represent the buyer and the seller. What we do is say, have someone on the team, have Riley, have me, have someone else with a license represent the other side. You can't represent buyer and seller, but then you would just pay one of us, whoever represented. I'll just use myself, it's easiest for an example. So let's say you had a listing and an unrepresented buyer came. You wouldn't represent buyer and seller. You would come to me and you would say, hey, Jen, for $1,000, would you represent this buyer that's unrepresented? And then let's say the listing commission was 6%. You would get that whole 6% minus the $1,000 that you paid me as a essentially referral fee.
Okay.
So that's what you can do. So you're going to make a ton more money, but you're just going to pay me a little bit to represent that other side, just so that it doesn't muddy the waters. And my team would do all the paperwork and yada, yada. So that's kind of what people will do in that situation. This goes over what professional advice you can and cannot give. Dispute resolution. If there's any, problems in the acquisition of the property that we're going to, do mediation through a mediator and come to an agreement, and that each party agrees to bear its own costs of mediation. Now, if anything had to go to court, this goes over the prevailing party will receive their attorney's fees and things like that. So whoever wins, the other side, the losing side, has to pay the attorney's fees.
Okay.
This goes over, are there attachments to this agreement? And in our case, there always are, because there is a document on our brokerage website called the ERS, which is the exclusive right to sell / BBA, buyer broker agreement, disclosure addendum. So it discloses that agents in our office have ownership rights in a title company, and some of them in like inspection companies or in home warranty companies, and that you might make recommendations as to who to use, because we have people that we like to use who do a good job, and that your client, even though the agents might have ownership rights or have made recommendations, your clients can use whoever they want to. So it's just making them aware of that so that they know, I'm going to make recommendations to you. You can use who you want. So then we don't get into legal trouble with them saying, I used the inspector you told me to, and I feel like they did a crappy job. Well, we told you you could use whoever you wanted to use. We made recommendations and you were allowed to choose. The next section 11 goes over to the equal housing opportunity, so that we are going to follow the fair housing laws that you learned about in school, that electronic transmission that they're signing, saying we can send stuff electronically to them to sign. This warns them of the due on sale clause. You learned about that in school as well, that some certain real estate contracts and deals can flag the lender, and they might say that the loan is immediately due. Knock on wood, in almost 2,000 transactions. I've never had that happen. So,
Okay.
but it's just warning them that could happen. This is just going over this entire agreement. What's encompassed in it is the exclusive buyer broker, the buyer due diligence checklist, the wire fraud, and our brokerage addendum. So it's all considered to be part of this agreement. This goes over the effective date, like I said, that it is when it is signed, that's the effective date, or the mutually agreed upon date, that's when it's effective. And then your client sign and date, and you sign and date. So when you're doing this for the case study, you'll just do a fake signature and date for the buyer, and then you'll sign it and date it for yourself. And like I said, those first two, you are going to do by hand, because there's just something about doing paper and pen copy that you learn so much more. And so print this out. Like I said, you can go to the office. Carla at the front desk will help you. Here's the buyer broker, the wire fraud here. This warns your client of the risks of wire fraud. It's real. It happens. I have seen. Sorry, it's so hot here. I've got to drink a ton of water. Never trust wire instructions sent via email. It's just always best to tell your clients, if you get any emails about money, you call me or you call the title company to make sure it is coming from us. Even if we send an earnest request, I have clients who we literally text the clients immediately and say, we're sending you the earnest request. They get it and they call us just to make sure it really is from us, which we laugh at, but it's fine. We would rather have them check than send their money. We had a client who was literally in the process of wiring all the cash to buy a house to a fake company. And thankfully we caught it. So it happens. So they always want to speak personally to people, do a call to verify, shoot us an email, shoot us a text and say, is this really from this transaction? Yes. So that's warning them of that. So if you take these to a buying appointment and go over all of these with your client, it's just going to help them so much more to understand their part in this. At the top of this one, you put the brokerage, you put the agent name, you put the buyer name, and then this goes over all their due diligence items that they need to check in on. They need to make sure the house or property is in compliance with building and zoning. Title usually checks in on that for them. Rental of the property, if they intend to rent it out, does that comply with local zoning rules? That's on the client. Now, if you wish to help them, like call Orem City or call American Fork, you can totally do that. But that's part of their due diligence. If they're planning to rent it out, they need to check with the HOA. They need to check with the city, county, all those rules and regulations. Hazardous waste and toxic substances, they need to check. Have they heard rumors that this area, used to be a dumping ground? Is there asbestos, radon, lead, contamination of the property, storing, illegal substances like methamphetamines? They're advised to do all those inspections to make sure. Radon gas, we can get radon tests for free from Utah Radon. So if they want to do a radon test, you just call Utah Radon and they come out and do the test for free. So your clients will be like, wow, that's awesome. You can get me a radon test? Yeah, I'll get it for you. You don't have to tell them, it's free. It's a great perk to say to them, yeah, I'll make that happen for you. No problem.
Gotcha.
Surveying and staking, make sure the property is within its boundary lines. I had a deal last year where a garage was halfway on the neighbor's property and it was in dispute. And so the clients backed out. Good thing they looked into that. Home warranty plans. Are there any warranties on the property for roof or what have you? Flood and zone insurance. There's some areas, I think it's down in Spanish and Santa Quin, that require flood insurance. And so your clients need to look into that. Homeowners insurance, what it's going to cost them. Are there any current claims from the homeowner's insurance on the property? Certain insurance companies will look into it for you. Like Utah Home and Auto, they will look into it and let them know, oh, they made a claim at this date, this time, be aware this happened. Title issues, homeowner association issues. So they need to look into the HOA. We will send them all those HOA docs They need to read through them and look at them. The physical condition, so having an inspection, the square footage and acreage, those are just guesstimates on the MLS, as accurate as people can make them. But if your clients think that it could be inaccurate, they can order square footage. Home Depot does it for, I think, like $100, measures the square footage. Some inspection companies do it. Utility services, who they're through. If there's like solar panels on the house, what do they end up paying for and not paying for? The water and water rights and well rights on a property. The geological conditions, is the foundation solid? Mold, a lot of these are covered under an inspection. Geological conditions, mold, all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Housing compliance, to make sure that, you know, schools, all of that kind of stuff. So anything that has been told to them is true. Property taxes, verify how much the taxes are. If it's in greenbelt status and they're going to take it out of greenbelt, there's a huge tax amount that they have to pay for that. So if someone's buying land or a huge amount of land, has some of that land been taxed as greenbelt? And if they're planning on taking it out and building on it, they're going to have to pay like the last 4 years of regular taxes, which can be thousands and thousands of dollars. The buyer is advised to verify that the property is located within a PID, and just different taxing things. Again, title will help them with that. Income taxes and legal consequences for purchasing the property. If they're a foreign person, they're taxed differently. And then the energy efficiency. If someone is saying it's an energy efficient home, look into that, because a lot of people don't know the correct requirements for calling a home an energy, like an Energy Star rated home. And a lot of people will say that because they're like, oh, well, when I bought my dishwasher, it said that. Yeah, but that's not, that's not all the requirements. And so you just have to look into all these things that are being marketed on the MLS and be careful about those things. So those are the beginning documents that you're going to want to go over with any buyer that you're signing with. It's always best to take a paper copy with you and leave it with them, or like pull it up on your computer and go over it with them in person and have them sign it right there. That's a great way to do it, just because then if they have any questions, they can ask you right then. It just helps to cut down on confusion. Or you can say, we're going to go over it here together, and then as soon as I get home, I'm going to send you an electronic copy to sign. But I always recommend at least taking the ERS or BBA with you, because you always want them to sign on that high. You're there, you're in person, they're gangbusters, have them sign it right then. The other ones, you can send them afterwards, so you don't have to print like 20 pages of paper copies of documents. So anyhow, any questions for me?
Let's see. I don't think I have any questions.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. I'm glad we could go over these. Get cracking on your case studies as soon as you get them done, and you can scan them back in. If you don't have a scanner, you can scan them back in at the office. Carla at the front desk will help you. Email it over to me one at a time, and I'll get those checked usually within a day or two. If it's over a weekend, it might not be till Monday, but get those over to me so that we can get things cruising for you and you can get those done.
Sweet.
All right, awesome. Have a great day. Go to team meeting. It's going to be awesome. And I'm sure I'll meet you face to face in the future.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.